Good morning, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest. The storm has kind of settled down just a little bit. We had a huge windstorm last night. Today, we're going to be talking about secondary mastery abilities. These came out recently. There was a big news when they kind of dropped. People were really excited about the buffs to kind of some of the classic characters that didn't see use, like King Elda, King Robb. And over the course of like a week or so, people got really hyped about it, and it kind of died down. And actually there are a bunch of other units now that actually have gotten secondary masteries on the JP side. Some of them change units limit breaks, some of them change kind of how you might think about these units. It's super interesting, so we're going to go ahead and go over all of these changes. Let's go ahead and dig in. The first mastery ability we're going to be talking about today, you guys, is Medina's mastery ability. Now, the secondary mastery ability that Medina gets is very on theme with her. It, of course, gives HP 10% to ice allies, 15 ice attack to ice allies. The magic 30% self buff becomes magic 40% for herself, and she gets a nice chunky magic resistance 20% for self as well. But the biggest thing is the upgrade to Cosmo Plume. Now, for those of you who maybe don't know what Cosmo Plume is or don't know the horror, back in the very beginning of War of the Visions, back when all of us were, tiny little WoTV babies, Cosmo Plume was the bane of our existence. It was Medina's LB. A giant freaking rainbow crystal comes down from the sky, obliterates your entire team. And even to this day, it's a powerful ability, but we have units like calculators that have very similar range and damage potential, so we don't see it very much. But with the upgrade to Cosmo Plume, I think it does make it relevant and potentially viable, and it's really cool. I just love to see it. It basically, the mastery upgrade gives it an additional range, and it also gives it an additional range height, so it is going to be able to compete with some of those kind of calculator abilities, particularly in farming. And I think for a lot of people, it might be good enough to slide into maybe a mono magic ice team, a little bit of a surprise. Newer players who are going to get Medina for free are going to have just that little bit higher power level where maybe she can pair better with some of the newer ice units that are coming out, like the new Ice Crystal Warrior. So very cool, very awesome. I think Medina's second mastery ability is one of my favorites on the list. Now, Thankfurt has already gotten a second mastery ability, but they actually reworked it when Thankfurt was released. So originally, Thankfurt's very original mastery ability was HP 10% for self, slash attack 10 for self. That got upgraded for the first time to HP 20% for self, slash attack 10 for self, and increase attack 100 for self. It also upgraded his skill Blasting Zone. Now he has an additional modification onto this where it gives 10% HP for light allies, light attack 15 for light allies, and the HP stays 20% for self, slash attack 10 for self, and increase attack 150 for self. Now, one thing to consider, which we didn't really talk about when we were talking about Thankfurt's EX a couple weeks ago, is that this actually makes Thankfurt have the highest base attack in the game. And I think that is something to consider and something to keep kind of relevant in your mind. With this buff, Thankfurt is literally the highest attack unit in the game. I don't think when you think about the highest attack unit in the game or highest base attack unit in the game, most people are not gonna think Thankfurt. And it's something where if you've seen my showcase with Thankfurt, in Diggs vs. Chat, he's not a terrible unit, and I'm kind of wondering if he might be going down a brawler route where his EX might potentially be viable a little bit more than we give credit, even with that 30% magic resistance weakness that he does have. Yerma, I mean, if you're a Yerma fan out there, you know who you are. You've probably already seen these upgrades, but Yerma gets a very similar kind of buff treatment that Medina gets. Yerma's original master ability was increase critical damage 15 for self, increase accuracy 10 for self, and what you see is she got an upgrade to her limit break. She gets 10% HP for wind allies, wind attack 15 for wind allies, she gets defense penetration 40 for herself, and then she still gets that critical damage 15 and accuracy 10. Now, her limit break does get modified to actually give Immortal Spirit to herself, which is a awesome buff. Her limit break is already something that you want to have leveled because it is one of the few abilities in the game that can lower single target resistance, and it lowers single target resistance 38 for 3 turns to the enemy target while buffing her own single target resistance by 38 for 3 turns to target. So if you can get Yerma close enough to pull this off, it is about a 3 range ability. Yerma does become somewhat competitive, particularly if you think about like Wind Slash with Joom coming out in the near future. I don't think, you know, Yerma is going to become god tier next level amazing, but it's really cool to see these buffs and these mastery abilities for people who might already have these units leveled. It adds another level of depth that I think we don't often think about when it comes to the strategies in War of the Visions. Gilgamesh is in a very similar boat to Thankfurt in that he already had a secondary mastery ability, and that secondary mastery ability got buffed. Now this one is going to get a little bit confusing, but his original mastery ability was slash attack 10, agility 10% for self. Then he got a secondary mastery ability which increased HP by 1,000 for self, increased accuracy 15, and then had that slash attack 10, agility 10% for self as well. Now his final upgraded mastery ability is going to upgrade his armor buffing ability. It's going to give 10% HP for ice allies, ice attack 15 for ice allies. The HP buff has been increased from 1000 to 1250. The accuracy buff has stayed at 15, and the slash attack and agility have stayed at 10. The buff to his armor ability is going to increase slash attack 20 for 3 turns to self and increase accuracy 30 for 3 turns to self, in addition to providing that normal barrier that it provides, which is a 50% damage reduction for 3 turns, which of course, because it's a barrier, it can be dispelled, but pretty good buff overall. I think it's nice to see that they kind of tailored the HP up a little bit more, since Gilgamesh is one of those double cost units. You do want him to be viable, and Gilgamesh is one of those units that is run with a lot of other ice units in almost every single ice slash composition that there is in the world. So having that capability to buff other ice units is very important, especially for PvE ice teams, for PvP ice teams. Is just one of those things that, I mean, he was powerful without this buff, and I would almost argue he didn't need this buff, but he got it, and he's still going to absolutely destroy with it. So I hope for those of you that are hyped for buffs and characters, Gilgamesh should definitely be on your list. King Elda doesn't get much attention. A lot of people have not been talking about King Elda, and that's okay. I mean, he's kind of a rare creature, right? Now, King Elda's original LB, increased HP 10% for self, and increased attack 20% for self, gets upgraded to increase HP 10% for fire allies, increase fire attack 15 for fire allies. That original HP 10% for self becomes HP plus 25% for self, and that attack plus 20% becomes attack plus 30% for self. He's also going to get a buff to his limit break, which is really fascinating. His limit break, kind of the Leonis wall, originally it reduced the damage taken 50% for 3 turns for 3 times to self, and increases chance of being targeted. This doesn't change at all. However, what does change is that previously it costed AP, and now it's going to cost TP. So this is a huge buff. It's really interesting to consider that he might be using this. This is huge. This is big. This is something that is going to absolutely transform how he plays as a unit, as a character. It's going to be crazy. It's almost like King Elda is more of a tank than he was previously, and you're actually going to want him to use his limit break a lot more than he was. That being said, I don't know if he will be using his limit break more. I don't know if most people are just going to turn this off anyway. But again, one of those things where we don't have very many fire units, and King Elda is pretty powerful, and this just makes him more powerful. And, you know, with Setia coming in the future, with, you know, who knows what coming in the future for fire units, I think we will see some use out of this. And I think we, you know, as someone who has a 120 Elda, I definitely take them out for a spin now and again, and I will be excited to see these changes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, probably the most important buffs that we're going to be talking about today. I want you all to take a seat here because this is going to be vital to my existence as a content creator, and that is the buff to Sir O. Now, Sir O, of course, I mean, you all know he's the best unit in the game. He's the best story character. His original mastery ability was increase attack 20% for self, increase evasion 15 for self. He's now going to get increased HP 10% for Lightning Ally, and there's kind of a new mastery ability feature at work here with O, where he's going to increase paralyzed resistance 25% for Lightning Allies. So instead of giving a lightning attack buff, he's going to give a status ailment resistance buff, which you're mostly taking Sir O or a lot of these MR units into PvE content anyway, where there may be status ailments present. So this does make sense, and it's another way to make MR units viable in a world where UR units are dominant, right? So I really like this change. O is going to, of course, still get that attack plus 20% for self. His evasion is going to become plus 25 from plus 15. And he's going to get defense penetration 20, which of course is really good since he is a defense penetration evasion samurai. He of course has access to, you know, many other sources of defense pen. I believe his vision card adds defense penetration as well. So he's going to be a monster, and I cannot wait to use him. Seymour, very similarly, also got a mastery upgrade. Now, his original mastery ability was attack 10%, accuracy 30. He now has 10% HP for fire allies, stop resistance 25% for fire allies, very powerful. That attack 10% for self has become attack 20% for self. He gets defense penetration plus 30, in addition to that accuracy plus 30. So again, all across the board, amazing. One thing about Seymour and O that we're also not talking about here with these MR upgrades, because some of these units that are getting mastery ability upgrades are below MR. Actually, I think all of the rest of them are below MR. Actually, we still have Elda and Zeta. So there's a few, and Robb, there's a lot of them. But the ones that are below MR, you're going to be able to take these into select quests, and you know, Seymour was already a monster in Fire Select Quest. With these buffs, he's going to become even more of a monster, and it just makes Select Quests more accessible. It makes these units more viable to level. All around, I would say good choice here, and I like the direction that they're taking. Ishtola, a free unit with the Final Fantasy XIV campaign, does get a buff to her mastery ability. So originally she had TP 15% for self, increased acquired AP 30 for self, and magic resistance penetration 30 for self. She is going to get HP 10% for fire allies, confusion resistance 25% for fire allies. The TP 15% for self, acquired AP 30 for self is going to stay the same. Magic resistance penetration 30 is going to stay the same as well, but she's going to get magic 20% for self and spirit penetration 20 for self as well. Now, the magic 20% is pretty important because Ishtola, of course, is a healer and a damage dealer. She's utilized both ways, so having access to more magic is going to make her heals hit harder as well as her attacks hit harder as well. So overall, really good on the mastery ability for Ishtola, and Ishtola is one of those MR units where she was free and she consistently surprises and she consistently gets results. So I love Ishtola. I love these buffs, and it's one of those things where, you know, this isn't going to make her meta, but it's going to make her very good when you actually need to use her. Elda is probably the unit that everybody hyped over, that gasmed, that just lost their minds. Elda's mastery ability, of course, upgraded Drain Force, which is a huge buff, especially the fact that it adds range height to it is a huge deal. But it also gave HP 10% to wind allies, wind attack 15 for wind allies, increased acquired AP 30 for self stayed the same, But previously, Elda had had slash, pierce, strike, and missile resistance 5% for self. Well, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and make that 15% for each of those. And we're going to give Elda 15% HP, which of course is going to make Drain Force hit even harder in the long run. Elda is a monster, and I like it. And I like that Elda is a very themed unit. And I like that, you know, the people out there who love the Drain Force, they got what they want, which is like a Drain Force unit. And Elda is definitely going to be that creature. So if you guys are a fan of Elda, please let me know down in the description, because I know all of you guys have seen that cabbage screenshot of like a 10,000 HP Drain Force or whatever it is. So definitely, I know lots of people are hyped for that. Oran J's waifu, Eilean, you know, she didn't get the best treatment. She kind of got done dirty, and I feel bad because the buff that she got is very simple. Like, all these other units are getting amazing buffs. She kind of got the MR treatment. She got, you know, her original mastery was Pierce Attack 10, increased TP 10% for self. She got 10% HP for Earth allies, Earth Attack 15 for Earth allies. And she got the same amount of Pierce Attack, same amount of increased TP percent. She got increased initial AP 20 for self and increased defense penetration 20 for self. Not amazing. That increased initial AP, that's okay. That's great. The defense penetration 20 for self, that's okay too. But it's not really like meta defining, game breaking. It's nice. It's nice. But I mean, like, it ain't no status effect resist. It's not like, does she have a ton of defense penetration in her kit? Not really. Yeah, I feel bad for Oran. I feel bad that this is the buff that his Eilean got. Zeta was pretty heavily talked about when Ziza's secondary mastery ability came out. Originally, her master ability was evasion 10, strike attack 5 for self. It's now HP 10% for dark allies, dark attack 15 for dark allies, evasion 30 for self, and strike attack 5 for self. So the big buff, of course, is to her dark allies and to her own evasion. I have to consider, you know, when I'm looking at this, is this like game defining? A lot of people were losing their minds over this. I think this is really powerful in global because we have access to the Luck Plus Venera vision card, right? But I mean, I feel like I'm never going to be running Zeta as in my evasion composition, right? Like, I have so many other units I could run that I'm never going to do it. What the mastery ability that's really exciting here is the dark attack buff, because Zeta is used in a lot of dark slash compositions, whether it's for steal time, right, or to use one of her other abilities in a dark chain, you know, whether it's her LB, whether it's pummel, whether it's going to be, I believe she has a single hit resistance down ability as well. But yeah, I think I'm more excited for the dark attack up than I am for the evasion. For newer players who have to level Zeta up anyway, this is a great buff because, of course, you don't have to have her 120 to actually get the secondary mastery ability, and she will be one of your 99s that you'll probably use as you're starting out. So for that, I think a lot of people should be happy. King Robb, interestingly enough, you know, he kind of got the Eilean treatment. His original mastery ability was critical hit rate 10, evasion 5. He basically gets HP 10% for light allies, light attack 15 for light allies. That critical hit rate 10 stays critical hit rate 10. The evasion rate becomes plus 15 from plus 5. And he gets defense penetration 20. He got the Eilean treatment. I mean, he was already, I feel like he's already powerful enough, and he's already one of those units that is included in a lot of mono light compositions. So I don't think he needs, kind of similar to Zeta. I'm just happy he got a party-wide light buff. Like, that's what I'm really happy about here. I think that's what I really care about. You know, quite similarly in the same vein, we have regular Stern, right? And regular Stern, triple trick in dark slash composition, always viable, but I have my Ruin Stern at 120, or my regular Stern at 120, and my 120 Stern, if anyone is going to die in a dark slash comp, it is always going to be regular Stern. So seeing him finally get a mastery ability to add HP 10% to Dark Allies, Dark Attack for Dark Allies is great. He's going to maintain that critical damage 25 up that he has, defense penetration 20. He gets a little bit of the Eilean treatment, but then he gets AoE resistance 10, so he's going to get that little bit more survivability. He's going to have a little bit more HP. He's going to be able to buff his allies. All around, it's just going to be good for Stern. And, you know, having Stern, you know, that 10 AoE resist could be the difference between life and death for Stern, that 10% HP as well, especially in like raid content. So I will readily welcome any of these buffs, particularly if you consider, like, if you're running a Dark Slash comp with Zeta and Stern, that's 20% HP that your Stern would not have had previously. So very excited for this buff. Our lead protagonist, Mont, does get a pretty nice secondary mastery ability. He originally gets defense 15, jump 1, but he gets HP 10% for Earth allies, and then he gets disable resistance 25% for Earth allies, which is going to be great. You do run him in some mono Earth compositions sometimes, particularly in like 5-man PvE situations. So having that disable resistance is going to be amazing. He's also going to get, oddly enough, pierce resistance plus 25%. I have no idea where that comes from. Like, I don't know if someone was just like, Mont's gonna need 25% pierce resistance, right? Like, this is like someone who was looking at Thankfurt and was like, maybe we should give Thankfurt 25% magic resistance because he has negative 30 magic resist. Nah. And this is, I'm like, what? 25% pierce resist? Okay. Probably the biggest buff, though, is going to be that increased chance of being targeted 5 for self. Readily welcome that. Mont is a unit everybody should have leveled. Everybody should have 120. Having access to Mont as a tank is just universally something everybody needs, will use. There's strategies involving it. You know, I'm just going to leave it at that. Welcome and ready change. One of the newer units to get upgraded is my girl Phoebe, everybody. Now Phoebe, now that we're in kind of the SR and below, they don't get insane mastery buffs. So we're gonna take what we can get here. Phoebe got AoE resistance 20 for self. I'm happy. I'm not gonna complain. I'm not gonna complain about Phoebe getting AoE resistance 20. Again, you think about these units being used in like select quest trials. Phoebe in particular, everybody should have leveled because she's just amazing in general as an SR unit. But yeah, I mean, AoE resistance 20, I'll take it. Bailo gets, in addition to his agility 10%, luck 30%, defense 10, spirit 10. Okay, pretty good. Most people don't have Bailo leveled, but if you are going to level him and use him, he is a pretty powerful asset in the select trial. I could see the case for making him a little bit beefier. Liarte, there were some people hyping up Aquatic Killer 100 on her because basically her mastery ability doubles. It was originally accuracy 50, Aquatic Killer 50, and now it's accuracy 100, Aquatic Killer 100. And you have to understand how the nature of modifiers work, because a lot of people see this and they're like, oh, she's going to do double damage, but that's not how modifiers work, right? Like, you could have on a character, you know, 400% in modifiers, right? And then you could add on this Aquatic Killer 100 for her, and she'll be doing 500% in modifiers. So it's only going to be like a 1/5 damage increase against aquatic creatures, for example. So it's not the biggest buff. And I have never used Liarte for her Aquatic Killer before. So, you know, the accuracy 100, there is some match PvP strategies where you're manually PvPing and you utilize Liarte. That could be viable with that accuracy 100, but again, dominance averse the units, I doubt it. Finally, we do have Zuzan, and the buff that he got is Maneater 20. Appropriate. I mean, I think 120 Zuzan, as someone who has 120 Zuzan and has used 120 Zuzan, he's actually viable. Like, he's actually, you know, he has a lot of man-eater in his kit. As long as you're going up against human enemies, he can kind of shred them. So overall, I would say the secondary mastery abilities are really cool. I'm excited to see more of them coming out. There's actually a schedule announcing what's coming out, when, who's going to get upgraded every month. So they're releasing it with the kind of EX upgrade status on the JP side. And I was really surprised that, you know, when the first set of secondary mastery abilities came out, everybody was like, oh my God, secondary masteries are coming. But I haven't heard anything since then. So really excited to do this video, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am. As always, if you do want to support me, make sure you use my affiliate link, dig.gs/coins. You can subscribe. You can leave a comment with a super chat down below. And have a great rest of your day, everybody.